In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
Joe had huge problems with the IRS.
I knew it was coming. I hadn't filed taxes since 1990.
All the IRS letters coming in added up to a nightmare.
To get up to like $68,000, my heart started beating fast. It's like, there's no way, man. I mean, I ain't going to be able to do this.
Then they stopped his paycheck.
So that's when I started making phone calls and found U.S. Tax Shield.
U.S. Tax Shield went to work immediately.
They just took the bull by the horns. What blew my mind is he called the IRS right then and there.
So why is U.S. Tax Shield A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau? Joe knows.
They saved me a ridiculous amount of money.
If you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS or state, choose the company Joe chose, U.S. Tax Shield.
It was the best decision I made. U.S. Tax Shield is the way to go. Life is good. Thank you, Lord.
Call 800-471-3287.
U.S. Tax Shield. Boo-rah. Yes.
800-471-3287. 800-471-3287.
Wake up, America.
Can if they step up and do it, and that's what we need. We're in crisis right now, Lou. The only way that we're going to collapse is because of an internal threat. Government consists in taking as much money as possible from one class of citizens and giving it to another class.
You've reached the office of Dr. Randy Arrington. Please have a seat, and the doctor will be with you in just a moment.
Wake up, America. I think I've got something to say to you. I love the United States of America. I want you to love the United States of America, too. Now, rest assured, Dr. A will not try to put his brain into your head. I will, however, motivate you to think and to use the analytical part of your brain that very few people want to use because it requires actual effort. It requires actual work. Lou Esposito is on the line with me. She is my producer, my sidekick, and I gave her the honorary tactical call sign, Wench, because she doesn't take crap from anybody. Lou, are you there?
I am here, and you are correct, sir. I do not take crap from anybody, whether it looks like it or not.
I like that. I like feisty, intelligent women, and that's why we get along so well.
Thanks.
Miss Stacy too. I know, but there's a couple things I need to teach her about life, and I'm working on her. Okay.
Yeah, I know.
Me and JD are working on her.
Stacy's one of the smartest people I know, other than you, of course. Present company excluded.
I like that, and I'm honored to be her colleague and her friend. Hey, you want to? We'll pick up with this Paradox: The American Presidency series that we've been doing.
Yeah, wrap up what we did last week a little bit, and start us off with what we're going into. I know that we wrapped up talking about the presidency, and we heard some clips that we're going to play a few over because we got cut off a few times last week, and we're not gonna. That's not gonna happen today, and
right.
So we might play some of those clips over, but set the stage.
Well, from a picking up from last week's show, from a professorial, scholarly point of view, in many ways, paradoxes define the presidential office. And it is the nature, that paradoxical nature of that institution that makes, as far as scholars are concerned, makes the search for a unified theory so elusive for these so-called scholars. Now, contradictions and paradoxes, as we know, are a part of life. especially for people in leadership positions. There's no aspect of society, no habit, no custom, no movement, no development that doesn't contain cross currents. For instance, starving peasants in hovels live alongside those prosperous landlords who are sleeping comfortably in their feather beds with their goose down pillows from Russia. Now, I got a feeling that you think what I just described is socialism. Can you comment on that?
Well, I think it's socialism, but Thursday night, I had a liberal on For Whom the Bell Tolls, and
you tolerated a liberal on For Whom the Bell Tolls?
I did, actually, Thursday night at 8 p.m., and he's a high school senior, really bright kid. He's our station intern, and he believes he's a liberal, but if you listen to his views, you might think a little bit differently, and he's a big fan of John Locke, so we actually discussed feudalism and socialism and what Locke might actually think about socialism, because he believes
it's funny you say that, because I use the term, I got a lot of these terms that you like to tease me about. They're drinking terms, and when I say them on the air, it's time to take a drink. Well, Islamo-communist in the White House, he is one. I'm not calling him a name. I'm describing what he is for you people. He's an Islamo-communist. Trust me on this one subject, okay? The other one I like to use is, I think I invented this term to describe brainwashing that occurs in our educational system on a daily basis, mind raped. So that young intern is basically mind raped by people in his life to make him believe he's a liberal, but then when you were confronting him and asking him questions about certain things, you realized he's not a liberal. He has conservative leanings or conservative viewpoints on various issues. Is that correct?
Pretty much. I did tell him that he's much like I was at his age, and he's developing his own personal ideology, which I think is a wonderful thing, but he's a free market capitalist and a fan of John Locke, and I think he'll realize how conservative he is in the future.
If you aren't liberal when you're young, you have no heart. If you aren't conservative when you're older, you ain't got no brain.
Well, I have no heart
exactly
then. I have no heart because I was not a liberal when I was young.
You heartless wench. I love it. Okay. All right. So now, get back to the series here. In life, when we're living, we are confronted with various paradoxes to which during the course of our living we seek meaning. The same dynamic is true of the American presidency. Let's talk about this for a second. As a people, in the mass, if you will, of course, you realize, let me just divert for a second here. I teach this to my students all the time. The politicians don't really care for the people. They're in a different class. They're in that protected bubble. Nothing is universal. I think Senator Cruz may be an exception to this, as is some of these other guys.
Mark Meadows is an exception to that, for sure.
Well, they don't really care for the people. They call us the mass, and they end up hating us because they're forced every 2 or 4 years to come back, in the case of senators, every 6 years, to come back and dwell amongst the masses, the common clay that we are, to seek our vote. And they don't like that. They have to do that. But we in the masses, we actually admire presidential power. But here's the paradox. We admire presidential power, and yet we fear presidential power. We actually, unknowingly, unwittingly, we actually yearn for the heroic in our lives. Yet we are also inherently suspicious of heroes. Unless they're the comic book heroes, which now that's all Hollywood is making, these comic book stories. We, as a people, demand dynamic style leaders, dynamic leadership. And yet, if you look at the Constitution, at least the enumerated powers, we grant only a strict set of limited powers to our president, to our chief executive. We want presidents to be analysts, sort of dispassionate analysts, and really good listeners Yet we also demand that they must also be decisive. We as a people are impressed with chief executives who display great self-confidence in their behavior. Now, to digress for a second, Donald Trump is doing that. That's probably one of the things that Miss Stacy dislikes about the Donald. I'm not sure exactly what
no, that
exactly
doesn't have anything to do.
about him.
No, that doesn't have anything to do with
Has she researched the Donald and looked at some of his past issue stances, and she thinks he's like a phony? I'm kind of confused by her disdain for the Donald.
This is what you have to understand about Stacy and I both,
okay.
Or Stacy and myself. We don't look at his past statements. We don't look at his past donations. We look at his past actions. And I understand very clearly that he's a businessman. But John Allison, the former CEO of BB&T, is based out of North Carolina, is also is also very much a capitalist. However, when eminent domain was endorsed by the Supreme Court, John Allison came out and very clearly said, don't bring your eminent domain projects to BB&T. And he actually did a satellite media tour. That is the kind of principle conservatism that we need out of capitalists in our society.
So you base your assessments, your analysis on actual behavior, empirical theory.
What a novel idea, right?
Of course. What you do defines who you are,
exactly.
Not what you say. I can understand why the Donald would give money to Hillary Clinton or Mr. Clinton when he's president. He liberally spread the money around as far as his political donations, because you never know as a businessman and the type of dealings he's involved in when he might need their help for some issue.
Sure.
So he's doing that, yeah.
Yeah, to us it shows a lack of principle where, by contrast, John Allison certainly showed a strength of principle, and I'd like to go ahead and put in a pitch for John Allison. Please run for president.
Oh. I thought you were going to say, Dr. A, please run for president.
You too, but I mean...
get students all the time that ask me to run for political office, and I've flirted with the idea of doing that. And my experience with the Republican National Committee, and I've got lots of friends in Congress, that I know, and probably would help me out, but my experience with the Republican National Committee was less than what I wanted it to be. All they cared about was how much money can you raise, how quickly, and we want you to stay in office forever. And I told them that's ridiculous. That's not how the Founding Fathers created those basic seats in the House and the Senate. It was, hey, come in, do your tour for government service and public service for a couple of terms, maybe 3, I don't know, and then go back home to your family, to your farm, to your business, whatever. Let somebody else take a turn and do their duty. That's what it is, Lou. It is a civic duty that you're doing. You're not in there for a career like my brother McCain. I love John McCain. I've flown with him before. I've talked to him personally, and I've told him where I thought he was wrong. I knew he was for amnesty many, many years ago, and I told him, "You're wrong, John. You're wrong." And a lot of you got to realize a lot of these people, they self-select just to get elected. I was listening to JD and Stacy earlier. I caught the last 30 minutes of the show. Very interesting. And I got in there when they were talking about the presidential debate, and they were talking about James Webb and how he didn't get a lot to say. I thought James Webb did a very credible job when he was given the opportunity to actually talk by Anderson Cooper, but they kind of, I think the rig was in. They were setting it up so that the socialists, the Sanders, could augment whatever Hillary said and try to dissuade us from continuing this investigation and our curiosity, if you want to call it that, into her. If you want to call it an email scandal, it's much more than an email scandal. She's a traitor. She committed treason. Come on.
Yeah.
Everybody knows it. Everyone knows it. We're just going to have somebody with guts to arrest her, as well as the Islamo communists in the White House. Take a drink, Yeah, so we got to have people with courage, just like you just said. You can talk a good game, dude or dudette. I want to see some actual real behavior conservative behavior out of you, and then I'll believe what you say.
Exactly.
So,
do you want to? One of the clips that got cut off last week was.
Did the NSA cut us off again?
No, we're good. We're rolling. One of the clips that got cut off last week was Obama's broken promises. So, you want to play that?
Has there been a few? Yeah, let's play it.
Yeah, there's been a few of them. Let's listen to Obama's broken promises.
All right.
Read my lips.
Start with George Bush.
I will close Guantanamo. I will restore.
I believe that marriage is the union between a man and a woman. Now, for me as a Christian, it's also a sacred union. God's in the mix.
I think same-sex couples should be able to get married.
President Obama, 24 hours after making history, he's making money.
Did he do it because he thought it was right, or did he do it for political reasons? 67% said political.
I'm a proponent of pay-as-you-go. Every dollar that I've proposed an additional cut so that it matches. And I want to go through the federal budget line by line, page by page. Programs that don't work, we should cut. Programs that we need, we should make them work better.
And that's why today I'm pledging to cut the deficit we inherited by half by the end of my first term in office. We are going to ban all earmarks.
I love that last one. He's going to cut the deficit in half. Instead, I think he doubled it. Yeah,
he spent more money than any of the other 43 presidents combined. You forced me to listen to that knucklehead. Next, you're going to force me to listen to Mrs. Clinton. That'll really turn my stomach and make me not want to have lunch. I'd rather hear Reagan clips,
I got one of those. We'll listen to those. And they also cut him off last week. They were doing Spreaker updates last week, so we don't want to blame the NSA or create some kind of conspiracy theory. But it was funny, actually, to make a joke out of it. But we're going to listen to the Reagan clips again this week as well.
I'd rather listen to Donald Trump's clips than those two knuckleheads.
Right.
So, back to these paradoxes. We as a people are impressed with presidents, again, who display self-confidence, great self-confidence. And yet we dislike arrogance and respect those who express reasonable self-doubt. I know you're not going to believe this. This is going to be incredulous to you, Lou, wench. I often get accused of being arrogant. Dr. Arrogance. And I just say, well, you're confusing that with great self-confidence. I have great self-confidence as a naval aviator flying off of 4 different aircraft carriers out in the middle of nowhere with people that want to kill us every day. You had to have great self-confidence in your abilities. That's the way we were trained. If you didn't develop that type of attitude, you go into combat, you are much more likely to be killed than not. And that's why naval aviators always have a swagger of semi-arrogance, I want to call it.
People who fly jets in general, and I know you like to make fun of your Air Force brothers, but people who fly jets in general, and especially the ones that land them on aircraft carriers, as an American citizen, I want you guys to all be arrogant. Please be arrogant.
Well, here's the deal between when you compare naval aviators, tactical naval aviators flying off the aircraft carrier, and my brethren, Brand B, Air Force pilots who I love. It's not that those Air Force fighter and attack pilots aren't as good as the tactical naval aviators. It's that they've never actually been required to be as good as us and land those jets on that bobbing little boat out in the middle of the water.
And how many yards is that? How many yards is that landing strip? It's like 2 or 3 football fields or something. I mean, it's only like.
Well, the whole thing's about 1,110 feet, something like that, if I remember right. But where we land, you've actually got to put your hook down in the 4 wires on the carrier there where you land. It's about, 80 feet, 65 to 80 feet, somewhere in there.
So you got to hit an 80-foot target with your hook.
Yeah. And a lot of people think when they first see the boat, Only people that actually have landed on the aircraft carrier can call it a boat, by the way. And only people that have actually, my dad was a submarine man in the Navy, they're the only ones that can call the submarine a boat. Everybody else has to call it a ship. But when you see the boat for the first time, a lot of people think that when you're up there 8,000 feet, 10,000 feet, you look down and you see that thing, careening through the water. It looks like a postage stamp. I think they'll land on that.
I'll bet. Yeah, I'll bet. Exactly. So let's take a quick break so you can rest your voice for a minute, and we will be right back.
An obscene profit break with the commercials?
No, absolutely not. That's for the next one of those comes at the end of the show. But we will be right back in just a minute, and we'll get down to business and wrap this up because we definitely got to get through this segment, this show. We'll be right back.
Okay.
K98Talk.com, a leader in internet radio. So grab your seatbelts and take the ride of your life on K98Talk.com.
This is JD.
And this is Stacy.
Join us Tuesday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern, for Game On. Remember,
lock up the children and the old folks.
Game On, the home of liberty conservative,
where no one is safe and no one is spared. Not even the hosts.
Oh, that was supposed to be a spin cycle. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. We love you anyway. Right round, baby.
Self-monitoring Ebola radio strikes again.
Anyway.
Anybody see the host monkey? Today. Where's the host monkey? Where's the host monkey? For God's sake, I need an antidote. Just do your rant. Let's pop out of the segment.
Find us on Twitter at JD and Stacy.
You're listening to K98Talk.com. The internet will never be the same. You're listening to K98Talk.com.
Whoa! Good God, y'all. What is it good for? Absolutely. Let's get started again.
And that last little bit of music was to remind you of why you're feeling bad on this Sunday morning, which is your Saturday night. We're back on air, Dr. A.
You know, that Edwin Starr clip snippet of War just takes me back right to when I was, in my youth. It's just a great song.
Yeah.
It kind of pumps you up. Okay, let's get back to this. We want leaders, as a people, we want leaders to be bold and innovative, and yet we allow presidents, chief executives, to take us only where we actually want to go, where we want to be led. So based on these self-evident truths, if you will, coming from Dr. A, how are we as a people to make sense of the presidency? This multidimensional, complex, often contradictory, institutionalized presidency that is so vital to the American system of government. You know, we have political laws, despite the fact that Hillary and, I don't like calling her Hillary, Mrs. Clinton and Mr. Obama break them every week, it seems like. But we have political laws that seem to constrain one president, and yet at other times they liberate another chief executive. What often proves successful in one presidential administration can lead to failure in the next political administration. So again, going back to those so-called scholars, rather than us, and I include myself as one of those so-called scholars, I'm not as smart as everybody thinks, but rather than seeking one unified theory to explain presidential politics that sort of answers all of our questions, I think, in Dr. A's humble opinion, that the American presidency is often best analyzed and understood as a series of clashing expectations, clashing paradoxes, and contradictions that are very unnerving to us, okay? Remember, leaders, and all of us can be leaders, depending on the context of our lives, leaders have to and will always live with contradictions. A chief executive, a president, must learn to take advantage of these divergent forces, must learn to take advantage of these contrary forces. Living with, even embracing contradictions for a president is actually a sign of personal and political maturity. I'm not sure Mr. Obama's ever going to mature. He's been there almost 7 years now. Leadership situations, Lou, commonly require successive displays of contrasting characteristics. The effective leader, one who understands the presence of these opposites. This type of leader, who is very aware of his surroundings, I often equate to being like a first-rate conductor of a symphony orchestra. A really good leader knows when to bring in the various sections. Tell the piccolo to pick it up. Come on, violins, you play a little louder. Bass, you go a little bit lower. That sort of thing. He knows when to bring them in. Knows when and how to turn up the volume, if you will, or sometimes presidents need to turn down the volume. A good president should learn how to balance, or any type of leader, a good leader should learn how to balance the opposing sections of his personal symphony to achieve the desired results. Effective presidents learn how to manage these contradictions, and for us in the masses, they give meaning and purpose to us when we are confronted with these confusing and often clashing expectations. Now, I've talked about this before about intelligent people, and it was F. Scott Fitzgerald who said, I guess he actually suggested, that the test of a first-rate intellect is the ability of that person to hold two opposite ideas in their mind at the same time, and then I added to that, without going insane. The proper place, Lou, of leadership in our American constitutional republic, based on democratic principles, it's always been sort of confusing for us, as it was designed by the Founding Fathers to be. It's been confusing for us in part because we have this sustaining myth that the people are sovereign. I told you a couple shows ago, we're an oligarchy. We are an oligarchy, and most people don't understand that or even know what an oligarchy is. One of your heroes, besides John Locke, was Alexis de Tocqueville, a French nobleman. De Tocqueville came to the United States and toured the country for a while, and he wrote a book called Democracy in America. It's a huge volume. If you want to read it, it takes a long while. But de Tocqueville captured this puzzling aspect of political life when he said about the American people. He said these people want to be led, but they simultaneously want to continue to be free. And since the Americans, cannot destroy either one of these paradoxes, either one of these contradictory propositions, those wily Americans strive to satisfy both of them simultaneously, again, through the institution, through the creation or invention of democratic constitutional government. Do we have any clips to support that, or you want me to continue?
We have the Reagan clip that got cut off.
I want to hear that. I need that before I level.
The contrast here be the kind of contrast that you've been talking about with strength and then calm thoughtfulness, depending on what he's being asked and what situation that he's in. This is a wonderful clip, and hopefully it plays through and plays correctly this time. So
I want to hear it, yeah.
Let's listen to our hero, Ronald Reagan.
Go away, NSA, leave us alone.
Right.
Tries to get the other candidates to leave. They don't. The fireworks begin.
If we may have the first question
before the question, you asked me if you could make an announcement first. And I asked you for permission to make an announcement myself.
Would the sound man please turn Mr. Reagan's mic off for a minute? Is this on? Mr. Green,
did you turn that microphone off? You asked for me if you would... I am paying for this microphone, Mr. Green.
his reason for the invasion and for the secrecy that went with it. 4 o'clock in the morning, I get a telephone call that the governments of some of the Caribbean island states have made a request of me for some support to their military, that they were going to attack Grenada because Grenada, a communist government, had seized power in Grenada, had taken over the power there, and they felt that they were next. But they said they didn't believe that they had enough military power, even though they'd make it available, but would need our help. Well, I immediately, 4 o'clock in the morning, got on the phone to our own people.
And thus the 4 a.m. phone call. He goes from being he shows his ability in those clips to go from being the tough guy that is not going to back down to you, and he did this over and over and over again, to the fatherly man who is taking care of the Western Hemisphere and coming to the aid of people who are asking for his help, explaining the invasion of Grenada.
I just, I don't get a thrill up my leg like that on MSNBC, but I do enjoy listening to Reagan. I think he's one of the best presidents we ever had. We were talking. He is. Yeah. We're talking about the presidency and the people and the masses. I think we're going to do a show in the future on something I call the presidential culture. The presidency has always been very important to American life, especially in crisis situations, but it may have assumed even greater significance during the modern era. The modern era of the presidency is depicted from when FDR took over the White House. So it is, in my humble opinion, it has assumed even greater significance to us as a nation and as a people during this modern era. And it was, assisted by new technology, radio, TV, internet, now podcasts, all that stuff. And sort of resting on new and often unrealistic expectations and new and often unrealistic conceptions of the office of the presidency. Seymour Martin Lipset is a very scholarly individual who writes a lot about the presidency. And he wrote this. He said, the office of the president acquired mythic dimensions when it was filled by the country's first true hero. Of course, that was George Washington. Washington, when I did some analysis on him, Washington supplied the virtues of he was a charismatic leader who served as the symbol of the new nation. He was the new nation's hero, who embodied in his person its aspirations and its values. Talking about the newly created United States. But more than merely sort of symbolizing the new nation, Lou, George Washington legitimized the state. Now, if I was to make that statement in front of my class or now in front of these readers, I would ask you this. Washington legitimized the state. How about Mr. Nixon? How about Bill Clinton? How about Junior? That's what I always call George W. Bush. How about Junior? How about Mr. Obama? How about, heaven forbid, Mrs. Clinton ever become president? Or how about, to throw a little bone towards Miss Stacey, what if Donald Trump became president? Would any of those 6 names or so that I just mentioned serve to legitimize our state, our status? What do you think?
You mean globally?
Yes,
absolutely not.
And to the people. Would he legitimize our state? To the people that live here and to the people out there that look at us as an enemy, would they fear us? And as our friends, our allies, would they believe what is being said? Would they understand that when we say something, we're going to do it and be their friend when push comes to shove? Would those people that I just talked about, did those people, Nixon, Clinton, George W., Mr. Obama in there now, do they legitimize the state?
I think to some extent George W. Bush did a lot to legitimize the state in the globally. But I don't know, like, within, to the people, I don't know so much.
Well, your buddy Trump just accused President George W. Bush of being at fault for the events that occurred on 9/11. He said it's his fault. What do you think about that?
I think that shows how much he knows about the issue. Because
so you're saying he doesn't know anything?
Right.
It did happen on his watch?
Sure, he was president when it happened, but he wasn't the one that bombed the aspirin factory in Sudan. He wasn't the one who, encouraged, practically, if not allowed, the Taliban to move to Afghanistan, where they were built up and encouraged and financed. You know, we were better off with Al-Qaeda in Sudan than we were with them in Afghanistan. Just saying.
He wasn't the one that decimated our military during his tenure as president. He wasn't the one that decimated our intel. You got to have, in the intelligence community, you have to have something called HUMINT. That's human intelligence.
Right.
And Mr. Clinton did away with that, as did who's in the White House now, Barack Obama.
And he didn't use, and both of them haven't used the intelligence that they have gotten. Just like the report that came out, I guess it was a few weeks ago now, that, the whistleblowers in the intelligence community are saying they're actually changing our reports before they get to the president. So, and that's cultural. You can't blame the intelligence community for doing that. It's cultural within the administration.
You saw the movie Good Morning Vietnam with Robin Williams, and he would go do the news, and he'd grab the news, and those two actors that were twins that were striking through certain things they couldn't say. That was altering the intel, and that's exactly what happened during Vietnam. Another Democratic president at the helm.
Right, and it went really well, right? I mean,
that worked out really well for us, yeah.
Right, we have historical evidence for what happens when you do that, yet they do it anyway.
We were within 1 or 2 weeks of getting an unconditional surrender from North Vietnam. Do you know that? If we had just continued bombing the hell out of Hanoi, they would have given up.
Yeah, Meredith required a course of the politics in Vietnam, and that was mentioned in that course, even though it was, not really driven home the way I would have liked for it to be. There, it was mentioned.
Well, I was being facetious when I said, does Obama legitimize the state? In my humble opinion, absolutely not. Dr. A's humble opinion, he hates the United States of America. You know why? Because he was brought up to believe that the United States was evil. He was raised that way by the various people that had a hand in raising him from the very beginning, wherever he was born. And so he wants to bring down the United States. These liberals think communists, when I say that word. Democrats think Marxist communists. They want to destroy the United States of America because they actually have been mind raped to believe by the cultural Marxists. And we're going to do a series on that again, cultural Marxism. They've actually been brainwashed and mind raped to believe that socialism, which leads to communism, is the best way to organize human relations in society. And nothing could be further from the truth. 120 million people, the last 100 years or so, 1917, when Russia became communist, 120 million people since then have been murdered under socialist regimes, whether it was communist socialism or it was Nazi type of socialism that was, all out German nationalism. And you can't understand. These people don't study enough to understand what's going on. I told you earlier I had a squatter mate of mine, a couple of them. I love them to death, and I would put stuff on Twitter or Facebook about being wary of communism, sort of like Senator Joe did, say it ain't so Joe. And they would come to me and say, "Hey, Dr. Ray, Teen Angel, stop it! It's over with. We beat those communists back in 1991." And I said, "You've got to be kidding me. It's there under the radar, but it has been there from the beginning. It ain't going away." And it's convincing many loser parasite, weak-minded individuals that we need to transition to socialism and eventually communism to have utopia on Earth. And I told you that socialism only works in two places: in the faculty lounge, where those overeducated, poorly educated fools dream of it, and in hell, where the condemned already have it. That's the only places it works, Lou.
I actually mentioned that Thursday night with
you did. You gave me a plug.
Right, with our friend Bryce, who believes John Locke would be a socialist today if he were alive.
No.
I know. Well, I mean, he's a kid and he's developing his, and I don't mean to denigrate him by calling him he's an 18-year-old young man and a very smart young man. He's developing his ideology, and I think that, when he reads more Locke, because you don't read a lot of Locke in high school. I mean, let's be honest. Yeah. So when he reads more, he understands more, he takes a couple of economics classes, that, he'll put this all together. I think that he'll do that on his own. But there's no way that John Locke, and I hope that he can't hear us wherever he is, because I think he'd be very upset by the idea that someone might think that he was a socialist, because socialism and feudalism are so closely related, and he was very, very much against the feudalist system.
In the process of contributing stability and identity to the new nation, which we just talked about with Washington, George Washington also endowed the presidential office with sort of a special meaning, and it has been incorporated. It has become part of our collective heritage, if you will. I call this the presidential culture. Now, there are widely held meanings associated with this presidential culture and with the office of the president that get transmitted from generation to generation through the phenomenon known as political socialization. Idealized views of the president were commonplace back for our school kids. I think we still have idealized views of the president being passed on to our school kids, but because of Common Core and because of the onslaught of cultural Marxism, those idealized views point to something different for America, and they point towards socialism, not rugged individualism and independence as an individual that basically defined the United States from the very beginning. We have these new idealized views that are commonplace because of Common Core and because these other things are happening in the United States. So many of us view the office of the presidency as having the ability to deliver us, deliver the nation, the deliverer, from all sorts of danger, from all sorts of evil, due primarily to the greatness of the occupants in the White House. What do you think about that? The greatness of the occupants of the White House. Let's look at the last several presidents. Are they great? And how do you define great? That's the key.
Well, a lot of people will disagree with me about the greatness of George W. Bush, because especially domestically, I know that he disappointed a lot of people. When it came to the international stage, international relations was my major. That was my focus for so many years. I think he did a really good job of showing the strength that Reagan showed, verifying a lot of things. And, he did some good and bad. So Bush, I would say, he might have helped us a little bit, didn't hurt us too much, other than the deficit and, some of the spending, but you could get into the details of that. Other than that, I don't think we've had a president since Reagan that really legitimized the state and really did anything to help us on the global stage.
We, in the United States, more often than not, the president is the most admired man in the country. And typically, usually, his wife, maybe one day the reverse, the first dude, whenever that happens, is the most admired woman.
And I almost think that the reason our last two presidents have had so much hate surrounding the both of them, because the people that don't like them really don't like them. There's vitriol and hate out there. I think a lot of that has to do with the partisanship, and I think the partisanship is fed by the immediate, the the state of immediate media. Everything gets out there, true or false, immediately. And I think that's driving a lot of the vitriol. But we're going to give your voice a rest one more time, and then we're going to come into the last segment of our show with another clip that didn't play through last week because of the technical problems, of a president that actually learned from his mistakes a little bit and tweaked things and did things a little bit differently to try to get to the point where he did legitimize the state. And for better or worse, he did a lot to legitimize America at the point in which he was the president after he learned a very unfortunate mistake, which we can talk about a little bit. We did talk about last week before we got cut off.
I'm going to call my friends at the NSA and tell them, look, hey, you guys are welcome to listen to Dr. Ray and the Lynch, but don't cut us off anymore.
Yeah, no, Spreaker was doing updates, but we love you, NSA, if you're listening. We'll be right back.
K98 Talk is expanding its lineup for 2015. This means we are expanding our advertising base. Whether you're a startup trying to push through to the next level or an established business trying to supplement your advertising budget, web-based advertising is a solid investment. Thanks to Talk's newest partnership with TuneIn Radio and instant access to our sister station, K98 FM, we give you worldwide access at a reasonable cost. Interested parties should email us at sales@k98fm.com.
Wondering why you're up early with us on a Sunday morning making a cocktail? News lately got you drinking? Hung over from the mainstream media by Sunday? We are, and we got you covered.
We sure do. We got your hangover cure for those weekly news blues. So sit back, top off your mimosa, and add some Baileys to that coffee.
Take a match to your copy of the New York Times. Light, funny, and oh yeah, news with booze.
And a lot of laughter.
Welcome to Bloody Marys and Broadsheets.
Abolish the IRS. Take all 125,000 IRS agents and put them on our southern border.
That's us. That's right. Gotta love this American ride. Both ends of the ozone burning. Funny how the world keeps turning. Look, Mom, no hands. I love this American ride.
And let's listen to this clip before we get started.
I'm ready.
Last segment.
I pledge you that we shall neither commit nor provoke aggression, that we shall neither flee nor invoke the threat of force, that we shall never negotiate out of fear, and we shall never fear to negotiate. Terror is not a new weapon. Throughout history, it has been used by those who could not prevail either by persuasion or example. But inevitably they fail, either because men are not afraid to die for a life worth living, or because the terrorists themselves came to realize that free men cannot be frightened by threats and that aggression would meet its own response. And it is in the light of that history that every nation today should know, be he friend or foe, that the United States has both the will and the weapons to join free men in standing up to their responsibilities.
And when was the last time we heard a Democrat president talk like that?
You realize that today, John F. Kennedy would not be a Democrat. He'd be in the Republican Party. Very similar to James Webb, who we talked about earlier. I actually would like to see James Webb win the nomination on that Democrat side. I don't think that will happen. I think it's going to be Biden and the guy from San Antonio. I can't remember his name. Hispanic guy that's now the HHS secretary. But John Kennedy would have to change parties because he is, fairly conservative compared to what you see on the left now in that Democratic Party. James Webb used to be a Republican. I don't know if you knew that, Lou, but he wanted to run against George Allen Jr. there in Virginia for the Senate seat. And so he looked around and said, well, for me to win that seat, I'll have to be a Democrat. And so he changed to become a Democrat just to win that seat. He self-selected to win that seat. And that's what a lot of these politicians do. They'll self-select based on what it looks like is the easiest pathway for them to get elected.
And I think that speaks to what little difference there is between the two actual national major parties right now.
Well, but there's a difference between the way the people think. Political parties are three-tier. You've got the actual base of the political party, which is us, the mass,
right,
and how we think. And then you've got the actual organization or leadership, of which the DNC, it's that knucklehead with this crazy hairdo, all the crap comes out of her mouth. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, she's the DNC chair.
Right.
Reince Priebus is the RNC chair. So you got the people, the organization, then you have the actual elected officials who, again, are in that rarefied air, and that's secure bubble in Washington, D.C. by the Potomac.
That's a really great...
All three think different. All three think differently.
And I'm glad that you put it that way, because I think most people don't understand that is the structure, and that the party, Reince Priebus has very limited control over what Republican elected officials do, say, and how things are done. He may have a little bit of control over, the election cycle and debates and things like that, but the way things are actually done, and especially in Congress, he can't control it.
Right. When you have a sitting president of a particular party, they are now the actual leader of the party. It's their party. The Democrats, it is Barack Hussein Obama's party, and that just is a burr in the saddle of Bill Clinton and his wife, Mrs. Clinton, because they want the party to be their party, and that's the way it works. We in the masses often believe that the president, our chief executive, can make extraordinary things happen. Presidents are expected, Lou, to live up to these idealized notions, these idealized levels of performance. And those chief executives who fail to live up to these idealized notions are severely criticized. Do you realize right now there are people on the left who are criticizing Barack Obama because he's not far enough to the left? He's not communist enough.
Which I can't imagine. I can't wrap my head around that, because he certainly is far more so than I would like for him to be. Hillary Clinton
at least to his credit, Bill Clinton, when he was confronted with Newt Gingrich, and when they took over the House there, and those 10 points that he wanted to bring the United States back around to conservative principles, at least he had the intelligence to go to the center and sort of allow Newt Gingrich and his contract with America to come to fruition, and then he was savvy enough to take credit for it.
Well, he was savvy enough to take credit for it, but he did not come around and start working with those guys until they overturned his vetoes about 4 or 5 times.
It happened despite him.
Yes,
yeah.
exactly.
You know what? Let me ask this question. And then I guess we're getting close to wrap up here, but does the President of the United States, our chief executive, does he, one day she, help society, help us in the masses, meet our emotional needs, meet our psychological needs for things like security, which we talked about when we had the first show. We talked about what's the buzz is happening in the United States. Does he help us meet those emotional needs and those psychological needs for our own personal security, our own self-confidence, reassurance in life, and does he bolster our pride and citizenship? Does the Islamo communists in the White House right now do those things for you, Lou?
Absolutely not. I think Reagan did it for us during the 80s, for sure. I don't think a president has to do that.
I hope Stacy and JD are listening, or they'll listen at 3 o'clock when we're on. But if and when President Trump takes over the White House, I'm wondering if President Trump will help Stacey and JD meet their psychological and emotional needs for security and confidence and self-assurance and pride and citizenship. Do you think that he'll be able to help them meet those needs?
I really don't. I know, and I don't have confidence that Trump is going to help anybody but Trump meet their needs. So I think that's my problem. That's part of my problem.
I told you this a couple weeks ago. We're talking about leadership, and if you're a leader and you have too much personal success as a leader, dude, you have failed as a leader. It's not just about you. I teach my Air Force pilots this all the time, and I was a single pilot my whole life in the Navy, in naval aviation. But in a co-pilot, pilot-captain situation, yes, the captain is in charge, okay? And then the co-pilot's job is to do whatever he or she can to make that captain look good, to do things to help that captain carry out his responsibilities as captain. But there's a two-way street there, Lou, in the leadership situation. That captain is also responsible to pass along to that co-pilot techniques, skills, knowledge that they've gained through their expertise and experience, pass that on to that co-pilot so that one day they can put that into their arsenal, and one day they can upgrade and become a captain themselves. And that's exactly what you talk about as a leader. You have too much personal success, you've failed as a leader. You need to help others around you achieve success and mature as a human being. And that's what a leader does.
And that's lost on a lot of people in a lot of situations, not just politicians, but I think that in politics it's probably definitely lost. That concept.
Well, it's almost all, nothing's universal, but almost all narcissistic. Almost all narcissistic. And I personally believe that Mr. Obama and Mrs. Clinton are sociopaths and pathological liars. I'm not ready to go to the next step, which should be psychopath, but sociopath for sure, and pathological liars. If you look at their daily routine and their daily behavior and statements, I don't think they can tell the truth. I think every now and then the truth slips out. Even Satan every now and then would let the truth slip out if you listen to what he says. Yeah. I think the same is true about Mr. Obama and Mrs. Clinton. They'll let the truth out every now and then, but most of their communication is nothing but lies and rhetoric.
Right.
And more lies.
I think it's clearer, with President Obama than it is with, as you call her, Mrs. Clinton, where it came from. But what I wonder about all people like that, because there's a lot of them, is where did it start? Did it grow? Did that kind of willingness to lie on cue come from your ideology, or does your ideology come from that nature within you?
It came from their upbringing, nature versus nurture. You realize that Mrs. Clinton, Hillary Rodham was her name way back when.
Right.
Her dad was a very respected businessman. She was a Goldwater gal.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
And then suddenly she changed. She self-selected and realized, let's see, I'm not going to be able to get ahead in politics because I don't believe this, I believe that. So I need to self-select and change and become a conservative, go away from conservatism and become a mega liberal. In that way, I truly believe some of the stuff she says, she knows she's lying. She does.
I mean, it was shortly after that.
She knows it's wrong, but she keeps spouting it because it is the basis of her power and her legitimacy in the eyes of the communist left.
And it wasn't too long after her switch from Goldwater girl to, militant Democrat that she was kicked off the Watergate committee for ethics violations. So, as a lawyer, and that's how she ever got another job after that. I'll just leave that to everyone's imagination.
Next week, just to tease the people, we're going to get further into the presidency and the presidential paradoxes. We're going to look a little bit more in detail about the founding fathers and what they had in mind for the chief executive, what was their thought process. And then, if we have time, if not, it'll be the week after, we'll actually get into, after we listen to some clips, we'll actually get into examining, I think I have 11 paradoxes in the presidency, and we'll look at those individually and discuss those as we go through. That might take 2 shows there. But
yeah, it may take a couple of weeks to do that, but this is going to be a really fun series, and I like the way that we're taking it clip by clip and example by example, and taking it kind of slow, because the presidency itself is a lot to wrap your head around, and the way that it's changed over our 200 plus years is really really interesting, really complicated. The paradoxes are just the beginning, and it's led to the power grab in the executive office, and it's led to a lot of congressional just ceding power over to the executive. So I think this is going to be a really interesting series. We're just getting started.
They get lazy. They get lazy in Congress. Let's just let the president send us a bill, and we won't read it. We'll just sign it.
Right.
Or,
yeah.
They get lazy.
They do. They get lazy, and it's they get scared. They're scared to. We joke that I'd rather Congress not be doing anything because we're better off when they don't. But honestly, the less they do, the more the president does. And
I don't think Ted Cruz is lazy. I don't think Rubio. Mike Lee, who's the guy from Kentucky? Don't you live in Kentucky? No, you live in South Carolina. I'm sorry.
Dr. A, stop. It's Mark Meadows from North Carolina is not lazy.
Rand Paul, I don't think they're lazy.
Jim Jordan is not lazy.
But
Mark Meadows is not lazy.
You look at somebody like Lindsey Graham, just lazy as can be, and they just don't want to do anything except, be called senator and go to their fancy restaurants there inside the Beltway. And mug for the camera. That's what they do.
Yeah.
And so if you have, I'm going to write an article coming up pretty soon, and we'll do some shows on it. The case for term limits at the federal level.
Oh, that'll be great.
It's so ripe right now to have term limits. You can't believe it. We need to start enforcing term limits and getting rid of these knuckleheads that are there for life. It wasn't designed that way, Lou.
Yeah.
Mitch McConnell will be one of the first ones I get rid of.
Right, absolutely. It was not designed to be a post for life. That's the antithesis of what those jobs are supposed to be, but they've become a political career rather than a service to your country. And
just to give a little calming salve to Miss Stacey, when Donald Trump gets elected, it'll only be for 2 terms. So he is term limited, Stacey.
Okay, well, I'm not gonna feed that beast with you, Dr. A. So we will be back next week to continue this series on the presidency. We're going to pick up with the Founding Fathers' idea and what they thought the presidency would be, like Dr. A said. You can catch me here on K98 Thursday nights at 8 p.m. We are right here every Sunday at 3 p.m. with office hours. And we hope that you guys have a great week. Any final words, Dr. A?
Let freedom ring. God help us. And everybody speak the truth and then endure those inevitable consequences for doing the truth.
Absolutely. And God bless America. We'll see you all here next week on Office Hours. Have a great week.
Wake up, Maggie, I think I got something to say. It's late September and I really should be back at school. I know I keep you amused.
When our water heater broke down last month, it was a nightmare. It took 5 hours for the plumber to show up, and he charged us a couple of $100 just to come out. And then it cost another $1,800 to put in the new water heater. By the time it was all said and done, I felt like I'd been taken. But what else could I do?
The smartest thing you can do is get a home warranty from American Residential Warranty. Their home warranties pay to repair or replace all your major appliances when they break, and they will break, and at the worst possible time. Call American Residential Warranty right now for free information on home warranties starting at just pennies a day. Don't wait for your refrigerator to stop running or your ceiling fans to stop turning. Call American Residential Warranty right now. Ask how you can save up to 50% on washer and dryer coverage. Just call 1-800-513-6154. That's 1-800-513-6154. Again, 1-800-513-6154. Call now.
Tired of paying outrageous prices for Viagra? Well, we have great news for you. Now you can finally get Viagra at huge discounts. Healthy Man allows you to save up to $500 on Viagra. Why pay U.S. pharmacy prices of $15 per pill or more when you can get Viagra for less than $3 a pill? Call today and get 40 Viagra pills for only $99. This can cost as much as $600 at your local pharmacy. You can't afford not to call us. If you want Viagra at the lowest prices, never pay $15 a pill pharmacy prices again. Get Viagra for less than $3 a pill. Call 1-800-516-7602 today and save up to $500 and get 40 pills for just $99. Healthy Man is fast, easy, and affordable. Operators are waiting at 1-800-516-7602 to take your call right now. Call 1-800-516-7602. That's 1-800-516-7602. Again, 1-800-516-7602.